spoiler alert, the final top four for us.
So I think City will finish fourth. I think Chelsea will finish third. I think Liverpool will finish second. And I think Arsenal will finish first.
Oh my God, is that a roar I hear from North London Nation? It's Rog. And I don't know if you know, but 2024, it's almost over. I know. I can't believe it either. Feels like only yesterday we were revelling in a more innocent time when Everton had only had just 1 point deduction and Manchester City were an all-trophy devouring unstoppable monster. Yes, kids, believe me, both Manchester City and Manchester United were once very, very good at football. Ask your parents. But we're a year older. Not necessarily a year wiser. That would be a stretch. But we've all consumed so much more footballing import as stimuli, and in this hysterical culture in which the football calendar never pauses and hot takes knee-jerk their way into our cortex, it's rare to have the opportunity to take a breath, step back and ask ourselves, is there such a thing as nuance? Big picture. Considered thinking. And while we all know the answer is no, of course there isn't, that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. And so to take a moment to look back on the last 365 days through a Premier League lens, it's a joy to connect with a gent who knowingly has a human mind and an animal mind. Bite your arm off for either, to be honest. Welcome back, the Crown Prince of Harrogate from The Athletic. It's my friend, it's Mr. Rory Smith.
Season's greetings.
Indeed, Raw. My present is under the Smith tree as we speak, and I do know the low light of your year has obviously been podding with me. The rest of the year, what mark would you give it out of 10, Raw?
Well, it's really hard to think of the year as a kind of cogent entity, isn't it? Because in a football sense, it splits halfway down the middle and there's a big gap. Some people operate in the tax year, the financial year,
yes,
and some people operate in the calendar year. I operate very much in the football year, so as far as I'm concerned, we're only halfway through.
Do you celebrate New Year's Eve the night before the Premier League returns?
Start of the season day. Yeah, absolutely.
You're out in Harrogate on the lash, just urinating through letterboxes, putting traffic cones on your head.
That is my New Year's Eve, the day before the start of the season.
Okay, Ro, before we go a minute further, we need to say thank you to our great friends at Volvo, who are the presenting partner of this entire MIB holiday extravaganza. I have a deep, deep love for Volvo. I've owned a Volvo for many, many, many years. It brings me huge joy. And be sure to check out their overseas delivery program, which offers you, GFOPs, an incredible opportunity to experience Swedish food, culture, hospitality and engineering in one really life-changing, fantastic trip that I hope to take in 2025. But Raw, it is that time. To the football, let's dive in. And our mission is to reflect on the annus mirabilis. I had to look that word up and come up with 5 things each that we will glean from the last year. Not your year, not the football year, but the, 2024 thing.
The Gregorian year.
Yes, that's the word. The castrato year. And we'll reflect upon what were we... That's what I'm trying to draw from this. Like, not to be hyperbolic, Raw, but when we're both old and we're in a rocking chair with a beer, we'll probably be living in the villages in Florida, as you do. Let me give you the honour of stepping up to the tee, drive the opening shot, Raw. What memory will you take from Premier League 2024, memory numero uno?
Well, I think the first one is one that spans both seasons, so the tail end of last one and the start of this one. And that's that I think the Premier League is actually living up to its marketing spiel. For 30 years, we've been told this is the most competitive league in the world, where any team can beat any team, where any game is a roll of the dice, effectively. And I think, except for the ones involving Southampton, it is all of a sudden. I think that if you look at the top 14 of the Premier League, they're all really good at football. The money has finally talked. You've got teams with different ideas, different styles. You've got giants who have the decency to collapse every now and again, whether it's temporarily like Man City or, semi-permanently like Manchester United. And what you have is a genuinely enthralling product where, to an extent, the competitive balance is there. Everything exists in equilibrium, game by game, not over the course of the season, and that is definitely something to be celebrated.
What a conflation of stories we are living to boot. To pull off the Premier League scriptwriters, the implosion of Manchester City, a torching that no one saw coming, but everyone's been predicting for at least the last 4 years. The Arsenal suddenly freezing in place, incapable of taking full advantage. The piles of cash in a garbage can set on fire that was Chelsea, suddenly playing optimistic, joyous football, and Liverpool, which still, as we will discuss, makes no sense at all, soaring. And below that, Brighton, Forest, Villa, still, Fulham. So many teams rising with talent and incredible coaching, which is like a newer element in the Premier League. But that is the telenovela we all get to tune into with the rest of the world, playing out live every single week. And City stumble, their mortality means for the first time in a long time, Raw, none of us have a clue what's going to happen any single weekend, apart from Arsenal scoring from a corner.
Yeah, that's something certain. But I think a lot of this is to do with City, to be honest. That there was always this sense that beneath them, even as the waters kind of roiled and everybody strapped for position, that ultimately none of it really mattered, in the sense that the thing that mattered the most was already set. But now that they've come back towards the pack, and we don't know how long the process will take before they surge again, it does give the league a feeling of being kind of a lottery on a week-by-week, game-by-game basis, and that is exactly how a sports league should feel.
I don't like the chaos. I liked it when it felt fixed and rigged, Raw. Now it just feels uncertain, and we're just seeing the planet spin, and it's just turtles all the way down. But here's my first one, and it is connected. I am thankful for the style of play in this modern Premier League. Just the prevailing positive mindset, which is to excite, to dazzle, front foot football. I can remember going to see Barcelona play Real Madrid in 2010, the game where Barcelona won 5-0. A very different Pep Guardiola beat Jose Mourinho. And the new camp felt like the spiritual home of football. And stopping off on the way to the game, I stopped off in an Irish bar. I think it was the day before in Barcelona, and we watched Chelsea play Manchester United. I think it was 1-1. And I just remember watching football. It was, it was all jacked up. It was like, this is the game that will end civilizations. It was just an enormous, it felt like genuinely the future of the free world depended on it. Maybe retrospectively historians will work out that it did. I think it ended 1-1. But I do remember just watching a negative, dour footballing battle in which both teams cancelled each other out, essentially waited for the other to make a mistake and then pounce upon it. It was dark. We're being told it was like Super Saturday or Super Sunday or whatever, but it was dross. It really was. And no longer. I mean, you think the football Liverpool play under Slot, what Chelsea aspire to under Maresca, we're on that to come. Bournemouth running from the off under Andoni Iraola. What magnificent brave football he conjures. Same with Brighton under Herzl and Marco Silva's Fulham. Even, by the way, you mentioned Southampton earlier. Even Southampton, for ill-advised reasons maybe, but even they try to play optimistic football. And it makes the game so bloody thrilling. Part of it is scouting and recruitment improving under data-driven leadership. Mentioned coaching, the bravery of young coaches being rewarded right now. Partly the individual players are just better Uber athletes than 10 years ago when they still love the beer and the pie a little bit more now. I mean, defenders who play make, strikers who track back and block shots, goalkeepers who can ping a ball 60 yards to the feet of a free-flowing winger. Essentially, there's a big Ange inside of everyone, who understands that football's not just about winning. It's about making us feel alive, giving us memories. In our day and age of chaos, I know it's corrupt, Raw. I know it's capitalistic and out of control, but it's almost a public good.
Yeah, I mean, I think it performs like a civic role, football, in lots and lots of different ways, and always has. And that has become increasingly more important. Here in Britain, it often feels like it's our last remaining industry, really, to be honest.
Now that Downton Abbey's off the air and the Queen died.
Well, to be honest, occasionally you do kind of think like it's Harry Potter paraphernalia and Premier League football are the two things that Britain makes and sells to the world.
We used to have an empire, and now we've got which station is it? King's Cross.
The Harry Potter shop at King's Cross, but that's not the only Harry Potter shop, Rog. There's loads of them. They're all unlicensed. or they're mostly unlicensed.
You're saying genuinely, England's relevance is hanging on essentially Harry Potter and, well, Graham Potter.
Harry and Graham, the double Potter. That's what we need. That's all our soft power. That's where it's all residing. No, I think that there has been a seismic shift. And you're right. I think maybe 2010, 2011 was probably the high point of that, of like early 2000s football, where everything was tense and negative and cautious. And the attitude was very much you wait for the opposition to make a mistake, certainly in the Premier League. And they will make a mistake and you will win. And we were taught that big games in particular should be quite boring, and that the boredom was almost a mark of quality. That if it wasn't boring, someone was being ridiculous.
And if you didn't like it, you didn't understand it.
Exactly. If you didn't like it, you weren't watching it properly. It was one for the purists. That has completely changed now. And, you see all these mad scorelines, not just in the Premier League, in the Champions League as well, between two teams who should be almost equally matched, and suddenly one of them is winning 5-0 and the other one wins 6-1 and all this stuff. And I think it's because the attitude has shifted broadly from let's wait for the opponent to make a mistake to let's force the opponent to make a mistake. And that is the change that has happened in football in the last 10 years, I think. And it is epitomised, Rog, by my number 2, which is the endless joy that is Brentford. There are lots of things about Brentford that bring me great pleasure, but nothing gives me as much pleasure as the existence of Bryan Mbeumo. I worked out relatively recently that he is my favourite current footballer, Bryan Mbeumo.
What was this process, Ro? Was it slippers on late at night, just in your pyjamas, just looking meditatively out at the moors, or did it just come to you in a bolt of lightning in the bath?
I think it was more horrifying than that. I think it was in the dead of night. I awoke bolt upright in a cold sweat, and my first words were,
"It's a Mbeumo."
Bryan Mbeumo on the counter-attack. There's something so joyous about not just his story, a player discovered in relative obscurity who's now a genuine bona fide Premier League star. There's something about his versatility, the fact that he seems to kind of play everywhere whenever he wants, all within Thomas Frank's tactical scheme. There's the exuberance with which he plays at home, the fact that the goals he scores seem to bring him genuine, surprising joy. He's got a slightly strange body shape.
Don't we all?
Yeah, fair point. I like him because he's got a slightly strange body shape. He is very much, as you say, an uber athlete like all Premier League footballers are, but he's slightly bottom heavy, I think is probably how you describe him. He's quick, but deceptively so. He doesn't look like he's especially quick, but then suddenly he's gone. He can do everything. He scores wonderful goals. He scores goals in huge numbers, not Ronaldo and Messi numbers, but enough. He plays for a team that are sparkling at all times, especially at home, and then have the common decency just to be terrible away. They're really good at home. They're terrible away. That's just who they are.
It's the comedy and sadness masks. It's just genuinely, that is Brentford's logo.
All of it just makes me extremely happy. So Brian, I'm thankful. I know that's a different holiday in America. I am thankful for the existence of Bryan Mbeumo.
10 goals as we speak. This Brentford side thrill me too, bro. For so many reasons, as you said, lose so many of their star players. Ollie Watkins, Neil Maupay, Ivan Toney, the man who invented no-look penalties trademark. And they just keep reinventing themselves as if the loss was merely a speed bump. And Mbeumo and his partnership and friendship with Wissa, who has 9 goals. His kids, Wissa, call Mbeumo Uncle Brian. But Mbeumo most of all, striker, speedster, chess expert, piano player. The rare footballer who does not mind the label of intellectual, which is something that would have been scoffed at in Premier League circles 10 years ago. The two of them made Brentford scoring inside the first 90 seconds of games almost the norm at the beginning of this season, of which I do not think enough was made, because that mindset is elite. As an Everton fan, I think I admire Thomas Frank and his approach to football just for the constant mining of minute competitive advantages.
Yeah, the thing that I thought that was fascinating as well, and I tried to make this point across here, and I was scoffed at, Rog, scoffed.
By me?
Not by you, by others in the broader football constellation.
Yeah, scoffed at for what?
Most teams do not try and score from kickoff. Most teams try and win territory or gain possession or make sure everyone gets a touch of the ball, or they try and manoeuvre the opposition into a certain position from which they will try to score. Brentford, and Thomas Frank has said this, decided it was a set piece so they could approach it like a set piece, and just like you have a free kick routine or a corner routine, you could have a kick-off routine. And you know what? it worked brilliantly. I think they scored from kick-off once last year, and this season they turned it into an art form. And yeah, those Brentford early goals, that little spell, October, November, where they seemed to score in the first 2 minutes of every game, that was yet another competitive edge that Brentford spotted that other people didn't.
I love Thomas Amber. He came on our show and told us the story of how hard they trained at their kickoffs, and it made me love him. I love him. I don't care who knows it. Thomas Frank, I love you. You are all that's good about this football season. But for me, number 2, you picked Mbeumo. I think when I think about the joy of this season so far, it's not one individual player, although there is one who I love, and I'll get to him in a second. It's been about the emboldenment of youth in general. How this has been a season which young flowers have been growing in some, even in incredibly tough terrain, to be honest. Lucas Bergvall, 18 years old, thrilling, his first start at Tottenham last weekend. Liam Delap, who claims to be 21. I mean, Liam Delap, that body, he looks like he's just changed the barrels in the pub and then trotted onto the football field, and he is just having it. Omari Hutchison playing alongside him at Ipswich. I think one came through the Manchester City Academy, another through the Chelsea Academy. They are preparing elite young footballers, not always for their own clubs. Tyler Dibbling, 18 years old, just somehow thriving amidst the week-on-week ass-whippings that are Southampton. A gent who wears his socks so low, I think even Jack Grealish would say, woof, that's crazy. I am blown away by them all. The bravery, the profound energy. Part of the reason they get these chances, I think you understand this more than I do, Raw. Football's now such a non-stop running and gunning of an athletic game. Young legs do have the edge, young motors, but part of it is also their brain. Jurgen Klinsmann used to say, I've said this a couple of times on Do It Lives, he was actually talking about DeAndre Yedlin, who he plucked out of obscurity to become a 2014 World Cup player. Akron Zips, he used to shout at the camera when I'd interview him, he'd say, sometimes you are so young, you don't know that you're meant to be afraid. And I know that sounds like Dr. Buffenschmetzer or whatever his name is, and not Jurgen, but stay with me here. We are seeing that on the weekly. These young brains, many who have been brought up in almost scientific laboratory conditions in these modern academies, they're pre-programmed now to have pure footballing brains, Raw, in a way they didn't. Even 5-6 years ago, a young player would come on and just try and pass quickly, make no trouble, not be seen, just not F up. But now they are enforcing themselves in a way that's just life affirming.
Yeah, I think they are. It's testament to how good the coaching is that they receive throughout the pathway from probably under 7, under 8, under 9, right all the way to the first team.
Under your tutelage, you mean?
Largely under my tutelage.
It all starts with you. Are you claiming to be the source of the river here?
Let's see in 15 years' time. No, I think they are able to do that because previously, when young players went into the senior team, they would be intimidated by the senior professionals. They would be made to feel often quite unwelcome because there is an element of you are coming to take my job. They would feel, I think, certainly inhibited in training, in games. That they would understand that they were in a position of weakness. They were the ones who had to prove themselves. Whereas now you have a lot of coaches who have empowered young players, but also clubs who have made it very easy for that pathway to exist. And all that, it's easy to look at all the player development managers and all the kind of people who look after transition from youth team to senior team and think that maybe football's kind of overcomplicating itself a little bit. But they're playing a really vital role because it means that when the young players do come up, they have been perfectly trained, they are hugely talented, and they are able to express themselves. And that is a difference. That is something relatively new within football that is to be celebrated, and it helps the coaches because obviously the coaches want to play this high intensity, high pressing, high energy football, and it is ultimately easier to do that, one, with younger players who want to run around a lot, and two, with younger players who are probably more likely to follow orders and do as they're told. And I think that has meant that the coaches have looked more to youth, and at the same time they've enabled the youth to kind of flourish and flower once they're there.
Yeah, to paraphrase the old Sir Alexism, you'll win nothing without babies is really
exactly
the mantra for 2024. But Raw, you talk about young things, a still young thing who's reinvented himself.
Yeah, well, I was going to say the flip side of that is that we're never really, I don't think we've ever been quicker to write players off. And going into this season, I'm not sure many people would have picked Ryan Gravenberch as a likely starter for Liverpool. And to be honest, as possibly the best midfielder in the league, defensive edition, for the first 5 months. There's somebody else who's been a better attacking midfielder in the league, Rog. That's why I'm qualifying myself.
Doucouré.
Abdoulaye Doucouré is the most impressive footballer in Britain. He's not even been a revelation, because this is exactly what he was supposed to be when he came through at Ajax. I remember going to see Erik ten Hag the year that Ajax made the Champions League semi-finals, 2019, and he was talking about the worry over what would happen to Frenkie de Jong and Donny van de Beek and this generation of players who'd turned Ajax into a genuine force. And he said, well, it doesn't matter. They will go because we have another one coming through. We have another 2 or 3 coming through. And he mentioned 2 or 3 players' names, and one of them was Ryan Gravenberch, who was already in the first team. And his view was basically, we need Frenkie to leave so that Ryan can come and play. And that's exactly what happened. And Gravenberch got his move to Bayern Munich. And it then kind of stalled for 2 years. It didn't really work out at Bayern. They weren't quite sure what to do with him. He went to Liverpool late on in Jurgen Klopp's last summer transfer window, 2023. Played a bit, didn't play, got injured, looked okay, not great. And Arne Slot came in. And I think as the debate over Liverpool's midfield options in the summer was bubbling away, very few people were thinking, well, he can rely on Ryan Gravenberch. But Gravenberch, I would say, has been Liverpool's best player this season. He is elegant, he is intelligent, he converts the game from defence into attack in an instant, and as much as he's wonderful to watch, he has that drop of the shoulder, that fleetness of foot that makes him a lovely player to watch. It's really heartening, because we shouldn't be writing kids off when they're 21 and saying, well, he's not made the grade. There's no such thing as a bad player, Rog. There's just a player in the wrong team.
God, I've got so many responses to that, most of them coming from the emphasis on the wrong team. But I'm going to be a bigger man in this moment and just say I have been blessed this year to interview a large number of Liverpool players in this most unexpected, long, strange trip of a season. The doubt-defying bold charge to the top of every bloody table. Gakpo, we talked to him about his faith, his sweetness. Trent, who he's filmed with, talk about a gent who has progressed so much as a human being and his willingness to open up in interview. Mo, Verge. But the one I enjoyed most was Ryan Gravenberch, who was just so definitely unbothered by the fuss about his reinvention. Didn't even, the interview I thought was like, it's okay. Because the theory just didn't... To him, it wasn't a reinvention. He was so very Dutch in his response. He came through at Ajax in this position. He already had it in his locker. In a way, Raw, it just took a Dutchman, Arne Slot, to understand the Ryan Gravenberch care and feeding instruction manual, which must be written in Flemish.
I think a lot of it's just... it's to do with 2 men speaking to each other without any sort of politeness whatsoever, as is the Dutch way. We joked the other day, didn't we, about the language, that the key to getting the best out of players was speaking the same language as them. More likely, I suspect, is that Slot's style of football suits Gravenberch much better. But also, and we've seen this elsewhere in the league this season, Maxence Lacroix at Crystal Palace, who Oliver Glasner clearly knew from his time in the Bundesliga, decided I could do something with him, signed him, and now Lacroix looks fantastic. I think Slot probably went into Liverpool with a very clear idea of what Ryan Gravenberch should be. And a coach who didn't have that same shared background, that shared kind of football culture with Gravenberch, maybe wouldn't have had that. So it has been beneficial for him. But just seeing him develop, seeing him become the player that he was meant to be, that's life-affirming.
So where am I going to go with my number 3, Raw? I have to go with one that's related to yours, and it is Arne Slot. And I know I'm a blue. I know I'm meant to spout just relentless hate. But the older I get, the more I believe that if you don't appreciate the good that football can offer you, I think this is a realisation that I've had recently. You are missing out on life. Because Jurgen Klopp left a pair of shoes that were enormous, almost impossible to fill. And watching Arne this season, almost not even seem to try to fill those shoes, to just be comfortable wearing his own, which I like to imagine are Clark's Wallabies. He's taught us a lesson that by being yourself, staying true to that, you can use your own methods, your own brain, your own strengths, bolt them onto the strengths of your predecessor for sure, but not feel any pressure to lean into any of the Klopp myth, or probably even more difficult as I think about the task, to not feel intimidated by it. No need to harness the emotion of the fans. No need to be a larger-than-life figure. Just have the confidence to earn it. Earn the respect of the Kop, the love of the Kop, through your own ability to first win over the players, which he clearly did in pre-season. Think through the tactical game plan, make adjustments at half-time, which has been his wizard card, just to make a vast number of your goals come in the second half based on your thinking, and repeat, and to do it all with a humility, almost an anti-charisma, a sense of humour sprinkled in at times, yes, but raw, an almost lack of ego. Raw, you meet football managers. How many of them have no ego? How rare is that? So to see one rewarded, it's almost divine.
There's very few who have no ego, and I suspect Arne Slot does have an ego, but he does have an ability to wear it a lot more lightly than everybody else. The one thing that managers, and I'm fascinated by this subject at the moment, Rog, the idea that we have structured football in such a way that we've created gods out of managers, and it doesn't really have to be that way. It doesn't really make any sense. It didn't used to be like that. And yet everything about football is designed to make the manager look and seem and feel all-powerful. And I think in that situation, it must be really hard not to allow your ego to run out of control. And who knows, maybe in 3 years' time, Arne Slot will have declared independence on Merseyside. He'll only be signing bald players. There'll be all sorts of things that have
Dutch
happened.
balds. Really,
Dutch
I realised
balds.
it wasn't just to speak to them in their own language. I needed someone I could relate to on a deeper level, only balds.
The natural shininess of the Dutch player makes it very easy for me to win football matches.
Shininess.
That is a Christmas Dutch accent for you, Rog. I think he has got to where he is now, which is Liverpool in the thick of the title race. Only a few months after people were saying, well, they might struggle to qualify for the top four. Let's not forget that for when they do not win the title. And he's got there through his modesty and his humility and being able to walk in, and this is a really rare skill in football, and say, that bit works. I don't need to touch it. Very few managers would do that.
And when I think about your comment that we need to make our football managers gods and it doesn't have to be that way, you think about like that line from, is it Freud's Moses, where he said the day we become grown-ups is the day we realise our own fathers have clay feet, which is pretty much, if we took Manchester United fans realised that about their managers and didn't feel a need to deify them, I think that change that Ruben Amorim is fighting for would come so much bloody easier and quicker.
But do you know who doesn't have clay feet, Rog?
Sean Dyche.
Sean Dyche has got clay calves.
I had an ego, said Sean, but I beat it to death because it looked at me funny. You going Ipswich Town for number 4, Ro?
I'm going Ipswich Town. And look, Kieran McKenna deserves a lot of credit. We should celebrate everything Kieran McKenna's done. Bright young face of British and Irish management. But the best thing about Ipswich, we know how hard it is for Championship teams to come into the Premier League. All 3 promoted teams last season got relegated. Luton, Burnley, Sheffield United.
Oh, it's magnificent.
They all went. Ipswich, Southampton and Leicester, they might go the same way. But for the first time in 22 years, there is Premier League football at Portman Road. And doesn't Portman Road look beautiful?
Have you been down there, Ro?
I've not been down there this season. I have been there before. It is a proper football stadium in the most proper use of the word proper. It has 4 sides. It's quite old. The stands kind of loom over the pitch. And because of the fact that Ipswich haven't been there for so long, because of the delight, and we saw this a little bit at Luton last season, the delight of being in the Premier League, because to an extent they feel as though this is kind of a free hit. There's no pressure on them. Leicester and Southampton came back into the Premier League, and their first thought was, we are back. We are Premier League teams. We should be here. This is our natural environment. Ipswich, I think, came up with a completely different attitude. They came up with the attitude that this is a wonderful holiday for a year. Let's enjoy it. I think it might be different in a couple of years' time, should they be relegated and bounce back. I think at that point there is then pressure on, right, we now need to stay up here. We need to sort of set base camp at 17th place in the Premier League. But for this season, it's a free hit. It's some fun in the sunshine. And the noise at Portman Road, the spectacle, the energy, the fizzing kind of excitement of the sight of even a diminished Manchester United visiting, that is something that is always precious, and it improves the league enormously.
I hope to go to Ipswich Town this season. They are from such a beautiful part of the country. The agricultural rump of England's East. They have a magical history. They really are a jewel of a past from the 1970s when they were tactical innovators. They brought in a pair, they kind of plucked them, these Dutch artistes, these gaunt Dutchmen, Arne Slot and Frans Thijssen, and played surreally creative, sculptured, cultured football. It was magnificent. So this dizzying rise, back-to-back promotions, historically rare feat up into the Premier League. One of the joys of the interviews I've had this year is with their CEO, Mark Ashton, who talked as a transformational leader, how he's pulled it off. I brought a lot of that interview into my own life, his approach to transformational everything. But you're right, it's the fans. By the way, Ed Sheeran, who is such an authentic superfan amongst them, just hearing that, we've got Super Kieran McKenna. God, that chant, Roy, he knows exactly what we need. Wolfie at the back, Chappers in the tack. Town are going to win the effing league. It's almost, in this commercially tainted world, it's almost naive, unfettered wonder.
It's been brilliant to see. And like you say, Ed Sheeran is not a universally popular musical artiste in Britain. I think that's fair to say. But his enthusiasm, his love for Ipswich is sincere. And it's really sweet. He doesn't have to go to Ipswich, James. He doesn't have to sponsor the shirt. He could just pretend to like Ipswich to sort of add to his man of the people credentials.
Exactly.
Whatever you think of his music, Ed Sheeran really likes Ipswich Town.
And by the way, doing things like coming to the game when he has to play a concert in Croatia the same day and leaving after 25 minutes to catch the flight. That I just love. I just love all of it. All of it, that authentic fandom to more. And talking about authenticity, which honestly seems to be almost a theme of this entire show, Raw. We picked these completely individually. We did not plan this, but my number 4, you've talked about a team and a fan base that brought you joy. I want to talk about one individual for a moment, and one individual only. Mr. Cole Palmer. I mean, Chelsea, by the way, what a transformation Enzo Maresca's wrought. On 5 straight wins as we pod. Yes, I know, Chelsea fans, they're not title challengers. I know. It gives me great joy. I met Enzo Maresca this summer. He was in Atlanta. We filmed with him for half an hour before the season. I think it was one of the first interviews he'd done, and he was so not sure. And to see him so sure, so confident, so in control, his vision, his actuality, but leading it all is Cole Palmer, just a chill guy with more goal contributions than any other player, more than Salah, more than Haaland, even more than Dominic Calvert-Lewin since the start of last season. But it's his persona I love more than anything else. Talk about remaining yourself, Raw, leaning into your singularity, your quite surreal singularity, if I'm being honest, not giving two craps. There's loads of edits on TikTok of Cole Palmer interviews, ours amongst them. But watching him with Amelia de Moldenberg of Chicken Shop Date, who is so brilliant and so sharp, but he just stood there. Footballers can be intimidated by someone who is that sharp and that acerbic. He just, in the spotlight, loved every second, did his thing. Especially human beings who are not, let's say, super effusive with the words. He just seems so comfortable in his own quite wacky, weird skin. And in a Chelsea team that are so young, so raw, so talented, he's so dominant. Miguel Delaney, I think it was, wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago how Cole Palmer might be the most single-handedly dominant player on a title-challenging side since Luis Suarez and his skill-kissed too hungry time at Liverpool. He is a performance artiste in a cast of hungry hopers. GFOP at Luke Taylor 77 on Blue Sky wrote to us, "We're not title contenders, we're just chill guys." But Raw, I mean that, particularly because he's also English and not just living up to the hype on the regs, but transcending it. I don't like to be hyperbolic. It is generational.
Yeah, I mean, the criticism of Palmer, the one thing that remains at club level is you'd like to see him dominate a game against another title rival. That's the big thing that Cole Palmer has to do.
But they're not title rivals, Raw. That's why he doesn't do it.
You can't do that because they're not in a title race, Rog. Despite... when this goes out, they might be top, but they're definitely not in a title race. Why would you think we're in a title race?
That's why he doesn't show up though, Rob, because he doesn't know.
What is it about my "we're not in a title race" T-shirt that I'm wearing whilst first in the Premier League is not answering your question? Do you know what the thing to me about Palmer that is really special is in a game that is now dominated by systems where what we watch is often the manager's vision played out basically exactly on the pitch, where it feels as though everything is sort of automated and everyone is just following orders. Cole Palmer, I suspect, is doing all of that, but it very much feels as though he is the individual interpretive dancer in the ballet choreograph. It feels like he is doing his thing according to how he wants to do it. And Enzo Maresca, I think a lot of his success is building a team that allows Palmer to do that. And that's really refreshing, because ultimately what people want to watch, I think, is the expression of individual genius. Most of what we watch is the expression of individual managerial genius. In Palmer, you get to see someone who is slightly maverick, slightly virtuoso, and that in itself is incredibly compelling.
You know what? At the root of it is an undimmed love of football. Raw, when I asked him, now that you're famous, is it annoying? He's like, yeah. I was like, why? He goes, people can't, stop you doing things. It's annoying. And I said, what do you miss the most? Expecting him to say, at the club, or, just visions of opulence, and, I can't walk in and buy 5 Lamborghinis or whatever anymore. He said, 5-a-side, playing 5-a-side with my mates. Like, genuinely, the thing he misses the most now that he is a famous person is playing the game he loves, that he's grown fame from, with his mates. And that, when you think about that, is just genuinely, it's a hat on a hat, his passion for football, that is the beating heart of everything that's propelled him to greatness. But time, Raw, for one more. Give us number 1 on your list. Let's do it, baby.
Well, I think our number 5s might be quite similar, Rog. I'm going to say the most heartwarming, inspirational story of certainly the second half of the year, but maybe all of it, is the fact that Nottingham Forest have remembered that sometimes you just need people who are quite big. And I think that bigness, size, is an underrated quality in football. Nottingham Forest
say that Shakespeare line, get me men who are quite big.
Get me men who are large.
Large lumpet.
Nottingham Forest, and look, you're completely right about the excitement of seeing all these young players, these young kind of virtuoso tyros coming through. It's wonderful. But Nottingham Forest have taken the view that what you need to play football in the Premier League and do well is large adults. They are the XXL of football teams, and that is best exemplified to an extent by Nikola Milenkovic, the enormous Serbian centre-back, but it's also exemplified by the gigantic Kiwi they have up front. And both of those combined, there's just something really nice. They're a good team to watch, Forest. The City Ground has been alive this season with the thrill of this team suddenly outstripping all expectations. And that in itself is wonderful to see, this huge historic club finally on the march. But the fact that they're on the march behind 2 enormous soldiers is just, in amongst all the sophistication and the wizardry and the technical brilliance, sometimes the bigger guy wins. And that's really important to remember.
By the way, 1-0 on Forest, because it's given me great joy too. We've talked a lot about on the pod the different elements of it, particularly Nuno's resurgence and the second wave of respect, which he's quite rightly earned, because he's when you actually spend time with him, he's a very zen-like creature. I like him very much. But I can't believe we've never spoken about this. I'm sure it's quite widely discussed in England. You mentioned the Kiwi at the heart of things, Chris Wood. To see Chris Wood turn from journeyman striker to potent smiter, a gent with the surname Wood at the heart of Forest resurgence. To see a pun, it's not quite nominative, it's like the bastard offspring of nominative determinism and puns rule. I mean, it would be like Arsenal finally winning the title because they signed a striker called Pistol. Or Manchester City coming back into dominance with a midfielder called Oil Money. It would be like, it's just beautiful.
Is your theory that Nottingham Forest should try and sign more players whose names relate to forestry,
arboreal,
woodland?
Yes.
Yeah, sort of have an arboreal theme.
Yes, but every team should. That's what teams should have to do. You know, in the olden days, teams were made only. Liverpool really was the best players in Liverpool. Tottenham Hotspur, the best players in North London. It was regional. We're past that now. It is a global game. I'm not trying to turn back the clock, but you should have to be on theme with surnames.
So you could have Leif Davis, the Ipswich fullback.
Yes, get in there. Playing for the wrong team. Move.
You could bring Michael Branch back out of retirement.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's all there. Yeah.
It's all there for the take. It's so on the nose. You need to make football like an Arthur Miller character where every man is Willie Lowman.
They could do all their shopping in Cyprus. Sorry.
Yeah. Everton. I've just realised, need to buy a player. I'm sure there's one in Brazil somewhere. A player who's called mid-table obscurity. Get me that man. Bite your arm off to play for the Blues. But my top and final one is City's implosion. And I say this not to be funny, to mock, but humanly, just wow. I mean, where did it come from? You know, as Hemingway says about bankruptcy, he says it happens two ways, gradually, then suddenly. Watching Pep as astonished, as impotent as we are on the sideline watching, a gent who has pursued perfection and who lives for control. Those two values are his modus and is far, far away from the former right now and has none of the latter at all. This guy who's won so much, he's touched the sky. I'm sure Noel Gallagher said that to him. Now he's plummeted to earth. And the extremes between the two, when you look at his interviews over the past couple of years, the disdain at times to be interviewed, the aloofness, some would say the arrogance. I don't think he is arrogant. I think it's a shield he's used as a strategy. But whatever, it makes this moment, the floundering, feel if more than just the end of a squad. I have no doubt, by the way, Pep will reload and go again. Competitive fires. There's never been anyone like him in football. But for now, Raw, the fact that it feels so much like a breathtaking cautionary tale is really the quality that I guess I want to highlight. And it's the Haaland stay humble, throwing the ball at the back of Gabriel's head. Then Oasis reform, the plummet begins, captured by, I think of Kyle Walker's season, Raw. His 3 season highlights are, number 1, poking Gabriel at the set piece, then having him dunk a goal on him. 2, being burnt in a foot race by Timo Werner. Which is like being beaten up by Milhouse, German Milhouse, and then having a fainting spell like a character in a Bronte novel in the proximity of Rasmus Højlund. I don't like to be hyperbolic. If this was 6 BCE, Greece, Aesop's would be writing a fable about. It would be like Manchester City's collapse would be like the dog that fell in love with its own reflection in the river. It
is still, even now, 7-8 weeks in, difficult to get your head around, I think, the scale of it, because we've become so used to them being all-seeing, all-knowing, all-conquering, basically impervious in a way that most football teams have never been. Even the great Manchester United sides of the 1990s and early 2000s that haunted my childhood.
Yes.
They had the common decency to... They won loads of games in the last minute. Manchester United spent most of their seasons 1-0 down in the 88th minute, only to win 3-1, somehow by the
Always
end.
Against Aston Villa.
Endlessly against Aston Villa. Whereas City were basically untouchable. They looked untouchable. And that it's happened to them, that it's happened so quickly, that it's happened in such a spectacular fashion, I think makes it really hard not to rubberneck. But it's also fascinating to see what happens, because there is no question that Pep Guardiola is the greatest manager of his generation. That is really difficult to argue. But the one thing he's never faced is a team that has stopped working. He's never faced this sort of crisis, this sort of situation where nothing he seems to do seems to work. There is some kind of physical, emotional, psychological, tactical, technical damage to his team. And he has to find a way between now and May to right that ship. And it might be they can spend some money in January. I'm not sure if that solves it. To be honest, it might be that they could name Rodri in the team at some point. I'm not even sure that would solve it now. I think there are far too many issues that have been laid bare at City that just bringing Rodri back wouldn't make a difference. Guardiola has to find a way to get through to the end of the season. He said himself it's a season to survive. He then has to look at his squad, make the heart-wrenching decision to get rid of some of the players who've been his most loyal servants,
Joe Hart,
and then try and do it all over again.
He's like, I must go and beat Joe Hart up again.
I think he might bring Joe Hart back so he can...
Oh, that would be... Oh, my God. That would be like the narrative twist that no one saw coming. By the way, I still think they're going to snap back to life. It's like a dictator. Until you see him captured, you do not believe it's over. But, man, you nailed one of his quotes. His quotes are so shattering. I am sad. Or, like, I am questioning myself. After the Manchester derby, I am not doing well. I mean, the Feyenoord wilt, the loss to Juventus, that late decapitation against Manchester United, the losses, the shame, the inability to arrest it. Again, I don't like to be hyperbolic, but this is almost like watching Elizabeth Holmes go from Theranos visionary to a prison jumpsuit. But the whole big picture Marvel remains for me. It's also a reminder of just how brilliant they were, of just how hard it was to do what they did for so long, to dominate. And I know you're professional, Raw, so you don't do Schadenfreude, do you?
I don't, and I think that is absolutely true, that it shows how fragile these empires are, that it doesn't take much before everything falls apart and is just dust. And the fact that City managed to stave that off for 7 years is astonishing. Even with the money at their disposal, even with the charges hanging over them, the fact that Guardiola managed to maintain this team at the level it was for 7 years is truly remarkable, because it doesn't take much to blow it all over. And I'm the same as you. I think they will come back. I don't think they'll win the league this season, but I'm not sure I'm willing to say that they definitely won't.
We're going to get to that, Rob. By the way, I love your thing that even the great teams go to dust. That's why you should support Everton, dear viewers, because we started at dust. There's only one way to... We're already at the dust level. Nothing can hurt you now. It's time though, Roy. You say I'm not prepared to predict ... But we are halfway into the season by the time this show comes out. We have a body of work to go off. So can you spoiler alert the final top four for us?
So I think City will finish fourth. I think that Chelsea will finish third. I think Liverpool will finish second. And I think Arsenal will finish first.
Oh my God, is that a roar I hear from North London Nation? Roar. That is bold. And Liverpool very quickly wobble because ...
Just because I think the performances haven't been quite as compelling as the lead they had at one point suggested. Liverpool, I think, will be competitive. They've been far better than I thought that they would be this season. They got that 9-point lead very, very early, and it took 2 draws to whittle it away, basically. 2 draws and a storm, and it was gone. And I just think Arsenal look like the sort of team who could really click into gear, whereas Liverpool and I think Chelsea might stutter a bit more. I don't think there'll be a huge amount of points between them.
But as the song says, when you have 2 draws and a storm, hold your head up. What is it? I can't remember.
When you have 2 draws and a storm, Arne Slot out. That's what the song says.
Fishy, get out me club! You're destroying me club! By the way, my top 4, I once took GREs. This is how I approach this. When I moved to America and thought very briefly about doing urban planning, that would have been a very alternative future for me. I learned to do multiple choice, which I'd never done before, something I'd never even thought about. Essentially what I learned was to get to the right answer, you sometimes have to just eliminate the wrong ones. And that's how I realised I approach this task at the moment of trying to understand, decode or game this season. And I do believe, for the first time, City will not win the title. I think they will be fourth, Raw. But I don't think Arsenal, your beloved Arsenal, Raw, bar a miracle January pickup. That transfer window obviously is the wild card as we do this. I don't think they got the footballing idea to win the league this season. They are like, to me, watching them, and I love watching Arsenal Football Club, but they're like a bro that's been a bit too at it in the gym. You know, may have too many muscles at this point. Their arms don't quite touch their sides anymore. Not enough agility. I'm not saying roids, babe. Don't do them. But I just don't see... ultimately, you cannot reduce football to Russian slap fighting and win the Premier League title this season. Third place for the Gunners, and that pains me, but it leaves second place. And part of me wants to listen to Enzo Maresca with all of my heart, all of my being, Raw, and believe him when he tells us, man is telling us, he is broadcasting it, he's blinking this out in Morse code. Chelsea are not going to win the title. I actually, when I listen to him at this point, I think of Magritte's work. You know, like that painting, This Is Not a Pipe. He is Magritting his way to glory, I have realised. This season is an Enzo Maresca Magritte surrealist masterpiece. When he says they're not going to win, I've spent time with Maresca. I like him very much and I want to believe him, but I do not, Raw. I think it's going to be close. But this Liverpool team, who I admire so much about, I just don't think, unless they make reinforcing moves in January, that they have a big enough squad to weather the grueling ultra marathon that a Premier League season delivers just through that merciless December into January when everyone's got runner's nipple. I think this is going to be close. But John Oliver just kept telling me in our Boxing Day special, Liverpool make no sense. They do make no sense. I do agree. So I have Liverpool second. By the way, Liverpool second is, I think, is it not an incredible result? Liverpool fans would have bitten their arm off before the season began.
Yeah, it would be a huge success for Slot. It's just it won't look like that because of the way the season's panned out. If they'd roared into second in the second half of the campaign, it would be, this is incredible, let's go for the title next year. I think now it would be disappointment. I do agree.
Do we have to be like chokers They're just
exactly. They will be They will be called bottlers.
Yeah, sorry.
Because they were briefly top in
Yeah.
December.
Yeah.
What I agree with you on, I think Chelsea are in a Goldilocks situation. They have a really deep squad. They are in Europe, but not in a serious competition. So they can rest their main players during the week, and they can keep their reserves fresh, and that is a real privilege. So it wouldn't surprise me if the team that ultimately has the deepest squad in the Premier League went on to win it. I believe Maresca's claim about youth. I think that's the thing that holds Maresca back. I think he feels that over the course of the season they will be a little bit unreliable because it's such a young squad, and I think that is probably true.
Enzo Maresca, we're not going to win the league, is Magritte. This is not a pipe. That gentleman is going to end with a title in his first season in the top flight. He'll be top. The 38 games that have been played, he'll be like, we are not in a title chase. He'll still be saying it, even as Cole Palmer lifts that trophy in the spotlight. Give that man all the chippy chips and sing with me. When you take over teams and you crush others' dreams, that's Todd Bowley. Enough of that. All that remains, still trying to get that to be a thing. We are almost at the end of this show. And we're also almost at the end of the year. But before we kiss off 2024, I do want to say again, thank you to our incredible friends, everyone at Volvo, who are the presenting partner of this MIB holiday extravaganza, have made this madness possible. Find out more about their overseas delivery program this holiday season. It is amazing. Just find it on their website. But all that remains for us now is to look ahead at 2025, the year to come, Raw, and make one big, hairy, wild claim about football and about what we're about to experience. You first, Raw.
So my prediction for 2025, given that we've already done the Premier League title race, would be, I think the Club World Cup in America, featuring Chelsea and Manchester City, will be A, won by Manchester City, and B, will be a tremendous success. It pains me to say that enormously because of Gianni Infantino's role in crafting it, but I think it fills a gap that football should probably fill. It makes sense as a competition. It's not been the way it's been done isn't brilliant. The way it's been organised isn't brilliant. I think making it free to air on a slightly complicated app, probably not a great idea. But I think the South Americans will take it seriously. I think the Asian and the African teams will take it seriously. And I think because Manchester City will need to win it to rescue their season, they will take it seriously. They will win it and it will become a thing.
I can't wait for the before the final. Pep Guardiola facing either Inter Miami or Al Ahly. Those are the only two choices. Just been like, oh, Al Ahly, so good. So good. Inter Miami, so good. Here's mine, Raw, and I like yours better. But I love mine because the most exciting part of the season so far for me, honestly, has been Everton 0-point deductions. That is the Christmas miracle. But I look at the year ahead and I watch Mauricio Pochettino. I've watched him grab the CONCACAF reins tentatively with this US men's national team. I've watched Tim Weah sharpen his spurs at Juventus. Tyler Adams returning to full health. And Andoni Iraola. So good for him tactically. So good. Gio Reyna, please God, doing the same. Christian Pulisic having the season of his life and back, I hope, in January. Anthony Robinson becoming the best left back in the Premier League and a captain, a leader. God, we need leaders. This year could be one filled with wonder, grappling with a Gold Cup of meaning against Jesse Marsh's Canada, Steve McLaren's Jamaica, Javier Aguirre's Mexico. I'd like to believe we are going to storm to victory. I actually believe the United States men will go unbeaten in 2025. This is me trying to speak into life something that I desperately need to manifest, by the way, to grow the noise around this team. We need it. The noise right now around the US men's national team is almost nothing. We need it to ramp up to a fever pitch. I think the World Cup is 541 days away as we pod. We dream, we yearn for that noise to ratchet up ahead of the World Cup. So to a new year, new possibility, and new dreams to have utterly shattered. Raw, you're a beautiful human being. I want to thank you. I do want to say, I know you're English and you don't like lovely things said, and I'm not very good at saying nice things, but it has been the joy of my year to marvel on the weekly. We all do here as we listen to you. Not just the breadth, but the depth of your football storytelling is a wonder to behold. Thank you, mate.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. It really has. And as you say, I'm British, so I do not like emotional conversations or anything sweet. But it's been a good year. Let's do it again.
Oh, mate, anything sweet, nothing sweet, only Terry's chocolate oranges.
Exactly.
And finally to you, GFOPs, I've got to say it fills me with wonder to be in dialogue with you via your tweets, your Insta posts, your blue skies, your emails at meninblazers@gmail.com. You are so creative. Your insights, your wisdom, your messages just sustain us. We work so bloody hard at the Men in Blazers. We are blessed to be growing so fast. 2025 brings so much possibility with it from a footballing perspective for all of us, and I can't wait to revel in it with all of you. This is Rog sending you so many thanks, so many good wishes, big love. Let's not take a second of watching football together for granted, and courage.